who have seen me under pen names Moira Katzen and Natalie Gray. I also write in one of Michael Anderle's worlds. And then if you think you saw me somewhere else here, you probably did. I'm here with Scribe Count, which is a sales aggregator tool. So you'll see some of the screenshots in here because it's just easiest to get the numbers out of it that way. Very quickly, how many people are here as individual authors? Excellent. And is there anyone here who's from a press or a small press? Excellent. Do come up and see me after. There's some more things that I want to put in your specific handouts to send to you. Excellent. And how many here, so that I can tailor my language correctly, how many here would describe yourself as very proficient in statistics? You've taken multiple courses, did a stats minor. Okay, we've got a few in here. How many of you would say that you are trying not to breathe into a paper bag right now because you're panicked? Excellent, wonderful, we'll take care of you, don't worry, don't worry. So if you ever have any questions about slightly more technical terminology, I'm going to skew towards the less technical because I did a whole bunch of tutoring when I was in college, and I found that people are way more competent than they think they are with statistics. But if you use the terminology, it sets off their fight or flight response. You know what I'm talking about. Yes, you do. Excellent. So, Craig told me in no uncertain terms, he used this exact language, that if I used the S word, statistics, I would be dragged out of this room and put in a dumpster. So shh, do not tell. We're all here, we're authors, we work with language. Generally, we approach numbers and statistics and mathematics very different than with literacy. If someone is having issues with literacy, we find a teacher to help them. We assume that it is simply an issue of seeing the task from another angle. With numbers, people are very prone to thinking, I'm just not good at that. I just can't do that. I'm just stupid. Mathematics and statistics are something that inspire anxiety, outright panic attacks. I have seen it. It exists legitimately. And something that you can learn with creativity by continuing to turn the problem over to different sides and view things. And it is something for which the basic techniques, and I seriously do mean basic, are incredibly powerful. So, as I mentioned, I am working with Scribe Count now. I majored in economics and mathematics. I worked in quality assurance, so if you all hate me by the end of this, I am used to it. I'm an author now. I work with LMBPN on some stuff, and I also work on my own things. So here I am. Now, you all, it's a choose your own adventure. So I will be sending out a handout with more in-depth details about each one of these 4 things, but I'm going to let you choose which ones you would like to hear about today, which are the most pressing. So, cost per click advertising. How on earth do you calculate cost per click? What are you paying for? Series sell-through. How do you calculate that? What do you do with it? Advertising responsiveness. How responsive are certain books or series to advertising dollars? And advertising stickiness. How long is the tail on your advertising push? How long do you keep getting that boost? So, if you want cost per click advertising, raise your hands. Okay, we've got one. Series sell-through. All right, a few. Excellent. Advertising responsiveness. Ooh, okay. And advertising stickiness. Ooh, I think. All right, I'm going to start with advertising responsiveness and go through to advertising stickiness. We'll go through as we have time, and again, you will get all of this information. Don't worry if you don't see it today. So, no, it sent me to cost per click. Deceptive. Shh. Okay. So we're going to do this visually. You can do regressions, you can be doing Euler method, you can be doing all sorts of things for advertising responsiveness, but we're going to do it visually with no calculations. Or maybe one calculation, I'm very sorry. But you can do this. All right. So here is how you look at advertising responsiveness in very basic terms with no jargon. You're going to create an educated guess of how many sales you expect from the series or book over the coming time period. You're going to measure how many sales you got over that time period. You're going to measure the difference between those. If this is a series, you'll look at the expected return per book. If it's just one book, it's a little bit simpler, but same issue. You multiply your return by the number of extra sales, and ta-da, you have it. So if you look very closely, you can probably tell which month I had the Bookbub. So you can see, obviously, there's this huge swing. However, there are also these little swings. Those are from things like paid emails that aren't $750 or $1,000. And so you're looking at things and you're saying, okay, what's going on here? We've got the paid email over there, $15. Interesting spike, and we'll see the return on investment compared to the Bookbub coming up here. We have a spike that no idea. No idea. It doesn't tie to anything I can find. And then we have another $15 paid email, which, and again, this is the benefit of just looking at your data. You can tell that one didn't really land. So we're going to go through the numbers, deep breathing. I'm going to use the first paid email as an example. The outlay was $15. I looked at the average sales per day over the month beforehand. I am using averages in this case because everything was within a fairly standard range. If I was looking across the day of a Bookbub, I would probably either exclude that or I would go for the median number. Averages get easily skewed, but it's easier to keep in your head. It's a more familiar number. So we can go into averages versus medians later if you want to. But in this case, an average was appropriate. On the day of the promotion, I had 190 sales instead of 90 per average. Over the following week, instead of having 630 sales, which would have been the continuation of that average, I had 790, so I had 160 extra sales. This book is a part of a series. If people continue through, and in the sell-through unit, we would talk about how exactly to calculate that. But the sell-through per book was $2.20. So that was the return I got in addition to the extra sales. So the direct return was $337. The conversion, and this is just on one book, was $23.46 return just for that book, not even for the sell-through, based on each dollar I had spent with advertising. How are people feeling? If you could go to the microphone. Yes, that will help people watching it online and later.
Sorry, I just...
No, go for it.
Math. So does that mean that for every dollar you spend, you get $23 back? Or maybe $23?
Yes.
Does that work? Oh, yeah, I did math.
Yep, that was the conversion per dollar spent was coming through there. And you can see when I'm looking at the return, I am subtracting the 15 because I'm leaving out that dollar, and then when I do the conversion, there's no subtraction because that's part of the baseline. Now, if we look at the second paid email, the outlay again, $15. The average per day over the month beforehand was 108. On the day of the promotion, I got 110, which is certainly numbers. Over the following week, instead of 756 sales, I was under that line by 86. So the return, you don't really need any specific numbers for that. I'm not going to hold it against them that my sales went down. I don't think that was an actual, like, everyone who saw that email went out and grabbed people who were about to click on my book and were like, no, don't. So, we'll see. But not great. This is something that tells you in the future, again, past performance, no indicator of future success. But once you know this, you can say, I had real good luck with that one. Or, yes.
But wouldn't you look at what was happening such as, was there a big political day? Was there a big disaster?
Absolutely. So the question was, wouldn't you look at what was happening around that day? Say, was there a big political day? In related content, so Scribe Count actually launched this year between January 6th and January 21st. And boy howdy did we have trouble getting anyone's attention. Woof. Okay. So, you don't plan for these things, but they happen. So yes, you absolutely would look at that. I believe there was another question. Yes.
Do you take KU? Do you calculate KU alongside of this, or do you put it in calculations?
Okay. So the question is, do you calculate KU alongside this? I would if my books were in KU. My books are wide, so this is and this is something that we look in sell-through, in the sell-through module. You'll see in the handout, one of the things I look at is the sell-through and profit per series. So for instance, in Amazon, per book one sold for my fantasy series, I get 30 cents back. At Barnes & Noble, it's $3.50. So things like that come out. But yes, what can I help you with? What was the time frame? So you will see in the next module we're doing, the stickiness module, that I assume a 1 week tail. So I assume that things will return to baseline within a week. Yes?
So I'm looking at your the second where it's minus 86. But if I compare it to the first time, your numbers are still up. You're still at 670 over what it was previous. So I'm just trying to, I don't know what the
Oh, different books. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. That is I mashed two things together. I'm going to change that in the handout. Thank you. You're wonderful. So yes, you're looking at the baseline around when you do things, and you'll want to, it's entirely possible to plot trend lines. That's a little bit beyond what we're going to be doing today, but it's something that I'm happy to help people with. So come get one of my cards and feel free to email me after this if that's something that you want to be looking at. And now I'm actually going to go into the Bookbub. This is a slightly more complicated calculation if you're not used to statistics, but it's totally doable, so keep breathing. I will walk you through it step by step. So the outlay for this book, and this is a completely different book than the other one, and the calculation was a little bit strange because this was a box set that I had put up for the Bookbub that was the first 4 books of a series. So when I'm measuring the discount per book, I'm measuring it against those 4 books. When I'm looking at the sell-through, I'm looking at it from the sell-through from book 4 through the rest of the series. And it turns out that that was slightly different. The people who went to book 5 after having read the box set seem to have been more likely to keep going. Things you learn, I've kept the box set up. But, so let's go through this. The discount per unit compared to what I was selling those 4 books before in terms of royalties, I was taking $8.08 less in royalties per book during the Bookbub span. That was the 3 days that it was discounted. The Bookbub was on the first day. On the average per day over the month before was 2.4 units of the 4 books. On the day of the promotion, I sold 782. So, excellent. But that was $226 because it was discounted to 96 cents, and I was getting 29 cents of that. Over the following week, instead of 17 units, I moved 538. 2 days of that were discounted, 5 days of it were not. I found the sell-through per book unit coming out was at $7.96. So for every unit of that book I moved, I not only got the 30 cents for moving that book, I got $7.96 as well, which meant that my return was $4,282. That's the expected from what I've seen so far. So if I were to run this again, I would compare those numbers. I would say, okay, I've gotten another really, say a book barbarian or something like that. I would say, is this holding steady? Am I still seeing $7.96 coming out of each one of these box sets or not? The total net, so that was what I made over the month following, both from that book and the following books in the series, not spilling over into other series, although I did see boosts there. So this is a limited calculation. But it came out to about $5,000 was my net on the outlay. Wonderful. The conversion, however, was only $7.63. So it did not scale as well as the mailing list I had done. Now, one of my statistics teachers was very fond of saying, there's statistically significant and then actually significant. And this is one of those times when you're getting better at numbers already. You can see the actual return amount is not as important as the fact that there were $5,000 worth of profit on this. So you can look at that and say it doesn't scale, but I don't care. On the other hand, if you're running several promotions at $15 a piece and you start to see these numbers, you can say maybe lay off those for a while. It's not worth the time and effort. So as mentioned from your question, I like to apply a 1-week tail to my promos and use a 30-day lead. So even if I have 2 promos within the same month, I'll be using a slightly different 30 days. Let's return again to averages versus medians. Averages are useful when you have numbers that are following within a fairly predictable oscillation. Medians become more useful if you have any numbers that go way out of whack. So if I were looking at that box set, for instance, I would discount the day of the Bookbub when I was looking at what do I expect generally going on with this at this time next year. I would use a median, and what that would be it's searching through your number set and looking at the number in the middle of it. And so that one number that would skew the average is not as likely to cause a problem with a median. That's all that means. When you look at responsiveness, this is very easy. This is very not what you think of when you think of math. You're establishing how much you expect for sales. You're looking at how much you get. You're applying the expected return per sale. You can do this. You absolutely can do this. I'm actually going to simply move forward. So let's talk about a tail. Oh, yes. What can I help you with?
It has been 20 years since high school math.
Yes.
Remind me what averages and medians are.
Okay. So the question was, can you remind me what averages and medians are? Yes. An average, you take all of the numbers, so say you have 100 numbers, you add up all 100 numbers, and you divide them by 100. So now you have, instead of the oscillation, you have basically what's the most normal value. What's the value that would have the least variation away from it over time? With a median, and let's use income actually for this. So if you look at the income distribution anywhere, what you'll see is you'll see a whole bunch of people at one income, and then it sort of climbs, and then there's the very richest of the rich. And so if you look at the average, because that tail is so high, you're going to have the average up here, when in fact most people are way, way, way below that. And so you'd want to look at the median, which would give you, you list all the numbers out, and then you go right to the center of the number set. And that's the median. And so you'd get something that's right around the average, but without those outliers. So it's just a way of keeping your numbers from getting skewed. Does that make sense? Okay, excellent. So stickiness. We're also doing this one visually because calculating differentials is beyond what we're doing today. Don't worry. The quick way of saying this is how long does it take to catch the algorithms and start Amazon spinning things up on its own or whichever the platform is, and how long does that last? When does it start to decay? The advertising curve functions very much like this. You've got the very quick spike and then what's considered an exponential decay. It's got that nice little curve. It's going back to where things were. What you're looking for is always how fat can you make that curve before it starts to trickle back down. And one of the things that can help you with looking at how effective your advertising dollars is that you can go to your advertising returns and you can say, well, I put $15 into my sci-fi series and that tale was 30 days long. And I put $15 into my epic fantasy series and that one was 7 days long. And so all of a sudden you've got a much better idea of where am I putting my money? What should I do? How do I get the most bang for my buck? We just covered responsiveness, so you don't need to worry about that. What we're looking for here is how long it takes for reversion to the mean. For those of you who don't do mathematics, what this means as when the other shoe drops. Like when do things come back to normal? That's all reversion to the mean is. I generally assume a 1 week tail, and then every once in a while I look at my numbers to see, is that accurate anymore? Or is a specific promo outlasting that, in which case, again, I will want to look at what's going on at the time. For instance, am I running it over Christmas when everyone's buying books or things like that? But it gives you an idea, a top list of promos you might want to repeat. Any questions so far? Excellent. Again, you can kind of see where the Bookbub happened. But you can also see, now that you've familiarized yourself with that sudden spike and curve downwards, you can see that in this photo. There's the spike, there's the curve. It's going down exponentially. It's gone to maybe 2/5 and then down from there, and it's approaching its baseline. That wasn't very scary, was it? Like we did that. That was fine. And so now you are more competent with the numbers. You can look at your numbers and you can say, I know that pattern. It's like hearing a tune on the radio. I know that one. I know how it works. I know what I'm seeing. And this is the essence of mathematics and statistics. It's making sense of what you're seeing the signal through the noise. It's not a different skill necessarily than the set of skills you use every day. It is not something you can't do. It is something that with a little deep breathing and the time to stop and visualize your data, you absolutely can harness. All right, we have time actually to go to series sell-through. And then I will do a Q&A, but first, were there any questions about advertising stickiness? Cool. That one was not as number heavy. If you have questions about the numerical side of that, that would be far out of our range for today, but come see me. Series sell-through. How do you calculate it? What do you even do with that once you have it as a number? It's one of the best ways to determine where to put your advertising money, and it also shows you if you have a problem, sometimes in your covers, sometimes in your marketing, sometimes in your writing, because you can watch that sell-through suddenly drop sharply off from, say, book 4 to book 5, and say, what happened there? As a related note, for those of you who are new here, I have seen so many people who have not released any books yet. They're here to learn everything before doing that. That is so cool. Series are important. They're very good for marketing. If you don't want to do a linear series, consider something like the Bridgerton series, a shared world that you can market, cross-market like that. So there's two main versions of series sell-through. Per book 1 unit is the first one. So per book 1 unit moved, and you can see I have free units here because I have first in series free for this particular series. Per free unit moved, how many books am I selling out of that? And what am I getting in return? So here we can see the delightful fact that I am getting 30 cents in return for every free unit I give away, which is not hugely encouraging. Don't judge my numbers. However, let's split this out by platform. I'm wide. KDP, 32 cents. Apple, 25 cents. Barnes & Noble, $3.50. And Smashwords, $14. So now I have something that I can say, I want to see if I can snag some Barnes & Noble promos on this series, because boy howdy is that sell-through fantastic. I can say, I don't move many books on Smashwords, but when I do, it's great. Are there any promos just for Smashwords? Can I do that? With some of my series, Apple is huge, and so I then target my Facebook advertising to people who are on Apple devices and advertise that one series. So you can break it down that way. Any questions at this juncture? No, excellent. You can also look at it as retention. So this is a second way of calculating it, and I do that per book in the series because that helps me, again, determine when and where there is a problem. And you cannot see all of that side. It is, no. Maybe. Come on. Okay. Yay. So we can see from the free book 1, Shadowborn, to Shadowfort, we've got 8.3% retention, which isn't horrible if you're on Amazon and you're doing free first in series. Not great, but not horrible. And you go from Shadow Forged, book 2, to Shadow's End, book 3, 81% retention. This is delightful. Now, you can see one of my newbie author mistakes coming right up. I wrote a trilogy. I was adamant that it was going to be a trilogy. That was going to be the end of it. It was still my biggest seller. So I wrote a fourth one. I decided to put that in a new trilogy. I didn't market it. And so you can see there's still 19% sell-through. That's not bad, given the fact that I have not advertised this at all. But it also means I need to get my butt in gear. And or I need to be looking at reviews. Are there people coming in from book 3 who are disappointed in book 4? What's going on there? These statistics do not tell you the story. They do not provide the answers. They tell you where to look, where to examine. Now I told you about the Bookbub. That was actually book 5 of this series, and you'll see that coming up, the series on the right. So Dragon's Covenant is the first one, and you have 6.5 retention into book 2, and 55% retention to book 3, 97 from book 3 to book 4, and then if you look closely, you'll notice that I sold more copies of book 5 than book 4. And that is because a whole bunch of those were coming in from the box set of books 1 to 4, which is not included in there. So this is one of those things that you can see. You're looking at things visually and you say, all right, I'm looking at this tail and there is a spike in the middle of the tail and that does not make sense. This is a thing you can do. This is a thing you can just see. It works. And so what I did was I started again from Dragon's Promise, book 5, and started calculating from there. I decided that Dragon's Promise was not the best way to look at things from over the past year. 85% retention to Dragon's Echo. 70% retention to Dragon's Nemesis. Now this is interesting because you can see instead of going straight to 80% like we did in my first series, we go to 55%. And then the people who are interested really keep on, but it seems to be book 3. Book 2 is where a whole bunch of people tap out. Obviously, book 1, a lot of them have it on their Kindles, but they haven't read it. Book 2, a whole bunch of people tap out. The people who go to book 3 seem to be pretty devoted. So that's something to consider. Now, we have formulas. We've been through this a couple of times. All of us here together will get through this again. Dollars per sale is the combined royalties of every book in a series divided by the units moved of book 1. How many dollars are coming in the door compared to how many units of book 1 are moving? Very easy. We can all do this. Retention. Units of book 2 divided by units of book 1. Multiply by 100 if you want to get the percentage. You don't have to. These are calculations you can do. Breathe. Tell your math anxiety to fall down a well and die. Calculate. Plan from there. If you consider this an open offer, if you look at your numbers, you go through one of your series and you see something that you cannot interpret, and you either swear I said something about it, you can't remember what it was, or it's just weird. It doesn't fit anything I showed you here. Email me. Seriously, email me. I will help you walk through it. I'll have cards up here at the table at the top, end of the talk. So you can do this. You absolutely can. Yes.
What block of time do you recommend we figure this out for? Like, is this an arbitrary month depending on when a promo was? Is this an average month or just random month or week or as far as that?
Solid. So what I would do, the question was, yes, thank you. The AV people, they are wonderful. The question was, how often should you be doing this? I would recommend at the start, so first what I'd actually do is, and I know this is going to sound like the worst idea ever, is set aside a block of time in your admin time for some week and just wander around in your numbers, just like sort of splash around in the shallow end of the pool and look at a whole bunch of pie charts and look at a whole bunch of bar charts over time. Just get used to it, get kind of inured, let all of your anxiety run out in the background. You need to have a certain amount of time before you've run through the adrenaline. And then what I would do from there is look at year over year first. Then start breaking things down into quarters of the year, Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. Look and see if you're seeing any normal oscillations. So in the rapid release schedule talk, Alana Johnson was talking about the fact that week over week, her highest sales are Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They kind of trail off on Monday, and then they fall into a pit between Tuesday and Thursday, which she just has to gut through when she looks at her numbers. She's like, oh God, it's never going to come back this time. But it does. and it goes back. So you start breaking down from year to quarter, from quarter to month, from month to week, and then over the days of the week, and you get used to what you're seeing and what patterns you're picking out. I tend to look at it at the end of the month. If I'm in a place just mathematically where if I'm running a promo and I see something that feels off baseline to me, I'll probably play around with it a bit, but there's no reason to do that before you're comfortable, before something sort of pings your spidey sense about it. Yes.
For people who are just getting started.
Yes.
And you don't have a year
Mm-hmm.
of data to like look through, like what would you say is the like starting point? If you're going to start today, publish today,
Mm-hmm.
where do you keep track so that you don't go crazy constantly looking at the numbers that aren't going to give you much information
Yes.
at a certain point anyway?
And that is, like, that's the trouble, isn't it? You start to get a sales aggregation thing. The question was, say you're just starting out, you haven't published yet. You suddenly publish. How do you keep yourself from going crazy by looking at those numbers? How do you keep yourself crazy is actually probably also applicable. We're all authors here. But how do you keep from focusing too much on that and delving too much into the numbers? That's a practice thing. It's a little bit like reviews. You will feel those big emotional swings as you are looking at the numbers and as you are looking at the reviews when you start out. Eventually, your body will run out of adrenaline to produce. I am not being hyperbolic here. And you will start to just view them more sagely and say, okay, these were my numbers today. I'll look at it. What I would say would be to look at month over month at the start. Obviously, if you had an option of a sales aggregator that you could use, that would be delightful. That would be very useful. But whatever works for you, all of the numbers that I had here were things that I pulled out of Scribe Count, but it is perfectly possible to do without Scribe Count. We just made it because that's a pain in the butt. But you can do it. You can look at that and you can say, month 1 I made $100. Month 2 I made $25. Okay, what's going on? And that's hyperbolic because my first year I made $25 the year that I released my first book. And I said to my accountant, they sent me a thing for $25. And he kind of laughed and was like, you don't have to enter that for taxes. You don't actually. Kind of like, great, thanks. But it's difficult to treat your numbers as, how do I say this? As an indicator of where things are, as a guidepost instead of as reality, actually. Your numbers are a reflection of the reality. The reality lies below the numbers. So it's just telling you where to look. Say in month 2, you realize that a whole bunch of people in your field that are the really big names all published a whole bunch of books. Well, suddenly that's a different thing that you're looking at compared to, well, everything stayed the same and my sales just fell off a cliff. I would also recommend being in author groups because every once in a while we figure things out because someone will say, did anyone else's sales take a dive on August 13th? And everyone's like, yeah, actually. Should we talk to someone about that? I feel like we should talk to someone about that. And you come up with Amazon had a reporting issue or something like that, and it gets worked out, but it also keeps you from panicking. So I am, in the last 30 seconds, I'm going to conclude here, and I'm going to get a little bit sappy, so I'm sorry. Numbers scare a lot of us, but you're here because you can do scary things. Publishing is scary. That's just the nature of it. Putting your work out there is scary. forging through all the parts of making a business that you don't know how to do. All of it's scary. This can be scary, and you can still do it. You may have heard versions of the sentiment statistics is a lying language, or you can make statistics say anything. That is true. If you torture your data enough, you can come up with something to support any conclusion. But numbers are also beautiful for their own sake. There is a signal within the noise. Finding it is a wonderful process. I hope if you come away from this with anything, it's the idea that there is a beauty and a story there too, as well as the stories that you are putting out. You can read books. Open yourself to the possibility that you can read numbers too. As a final note, Scribe Count is giving away a one-on-one with me to go over your individual numbers. Come up and sign up if you're interested in that. And anyone who signs up, I will also send the pamphlet about this talk. So, thank you all so much for being here, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your con.